Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to HitScan. We are doing our first ever patch notes video for Valorant as obviously a patch has just come out and it brings Raze and Sage nerfs, some of which that were spoken about before in the past by devs, but also some new ones that are actually kind of interesting. We'll start with the main one. Raze got nerfed. How did she get nerfed? Well, her paint shells count has been reduced from having 2 charges of it to only 1. However, they now have a kill reset. Similar to Phoenix and Jet like we went over in a previous video, you can use the paint shells, then when you get 2 kills, it refreshes the cooldown, allowing you to use it again. They also adjusted the audio for not only the paint shells but the blast pack and the showstopper ultimate, so they're easier to hear in hectic scenarios, another thing that the devs brought up previously. And it also fixed the case where the secondary cluster of paint shells would explode quicker than intended, and now they have a minimum duration before exploding. This is different to actually one of the changes they spoke about doing, where the outside radius of the paint shells would do less damage. It seems that they're still quite lethal if you're stuck in there, but you have a bit more time to get out of the way of the paint shells with the duration being increased. They also talk about why they've done these changes. Raze's goal is to be a highly threatening duelist that punishes enemies posted in predictable positions. I feel like they did that tongue twist on purpose, but we feel like the cluster grenades and their number were creating overly oppressive scenarios, being able to spam them and all. Also, players should be supplied proper gameplay information with the audio cues on all of Raze's abilities, so we changed the audio of each. For example, when the showstopper is equipped or fired from a distance, the player should be able to clearly identify and interpret the threat. Just as a thing to add, these changes haven't gone through into the game just yet, at least at the time of recording, but I didn't feel they were necessary to get gameplay examples of these because we pretty much understand what these changes are. It really lines up Raze to be similar to the other duelists, which I love, the whole 2 kills resetting the ability, but it brings Raze down to a level now where she's still good and she can still pub stomp, but it's not as oppressive as it was before. There was a case I'd say that Raze was very much like Bastion at the launch of Overwatch, where everybody complained to have Bastion nerfed, but over time they learned how to play around him. Bastion didn't need a nerf at all, people just got good. I feel there's still an element of that that's applying to Raze. Her stonks are definitely dropping as time goes on, but this brings her really down to a peg, similar to where Jet and Phoenix are, I think, for that duelist role. So overall, I'm kind of happy with these changes. But there's actually 2 nerfs that Sage has been hit with, but she also got a bit of a quality of life buff. The slow orbs now also slow the airspeed of players within the zone, so people can't bunny hop through them anymore. But that's met with the nerf. Players can walk through the slow orb without making any form of noise, and they talk about specifically what the first part of that means. Players were able to circumvent too much of Sage's slow orb by bunny hopping through the zone. We want the minimum slow amount to be a bit more consistent with all of the movement, while still allowing for bunny hopping and walking to provide a slight benefit to traversing it. Also, we feel adding a stealthy yet slow way to move through the field brings more nuance to playing against the zone and a bit more uncertainty for Sage, since she can't necessarily hear people who move through. This change is great. Sage is definitely like an S tier pick when it comes to agents that people really should be playing, even though they may necessarily not want to. There's a lot of Sage's kit where it's a case of, oh, if I put up a wall here or a slow orb down there, I don't need to worry about this for like another 30 to 40 seconds. Now, as the devs rightfully highlighted, you definitely do. You can be caught with your trousers down playing Sage, so you have to definitely keep an eye on certain flanks and avenues. Otherwise, good players will just sneak up behind you. But that's not all. Another change that the devs highlighted that might be coming to Sage was that melee attacks would do double the damage to destructibles, specifically her barrier orb. But this also does include the metal double doors on Haven. The devs explained there weren't enough options during low economy rounds, such as the first round and right after switching sides, to combat Sage's barrier orb, because your gun couldn't really do too much damage and you were going to run out of ammo if you did that. So our intent is to add a high risk, high reward method for players to interact with her wall while still being able to take it down no matter their loadout. Because obviously if you buy a Phantom or a Vandal, you can just use your pistol to break down the wall. You can't really do that on a pistol round. You need those bullets, they're really important. So this is just another big hit for Sage that still makes her one of the best agents within Valorant, but honestly not like S tier. You need to play her all the time because her utility is just too good, which is definitely the feeling that I'm getting at the moment. She still provides a lot of utility, but you still have to be good at the character, if that makes sense. Not slating any Sage mains out there, you know what I mean, I feel. Other than that, there were a few bug fixes too, a couple of server crash issues that came in, a couple of exploits for maps on Bind, Haven and Split. No doubt with spy cams being shoved into God knows what. We'll have to test out a few of these because I think there's more information to be found out. Of course, Cypher spy cam can no longer use weapons. That was hotfixed a couple of days ago. And footstep audio range would sometimes not appear on the minimap. I'm glad because that happened to me a lot. Not a huge thing, but it's nice to be added in. There's only one map change so far, and it is the Split. Do not get your hopes up. Basically, the orb that you could pick up to get ult charge has been moved from B mid, which I assume is just mid, to B main, which I'm not quite sure where on B main that would be, but I would have to guess it would be here where I'm standing on screen. Of course, you have to sort of push through the garage area, and if you really do want that orb, you have to really show yourself to the defenders that are holding on to B. So that's where realistically it should all line up. So some cool stuff there, but they actually go into a bit more detail on what Raze means for the game. Not only in this, but also in another post that came out of Joe Siegler and Anna Donlan. Some really cool stuff in there, but the first thing I want to highlight from the patch notes is that Raze is lethal, no doubt, and we predict savvy players will perform better against her over time. Still, we made some light changes that could bring Raze's offensive pressure closer to the other agents. We're also buffing melee to give players in the early rounds a better way to deal with Sage's barrier orb, while still making it a calculated risk. Don't worry Sage mains, your slow orb now slows those bunny hoppers too. Sorry Mendo. And we're booting the Phrase camera gun back to the English spy films where they belong. All pretty good stuff. But on the subject of Raze and anti-cheat, like I mentioned, the two main head developers of Valorant go into a bit more detail. I'm not going to read it all out, but just a couple of paragraphs that I think are really worth highlighting if you care about the game's balance and all that jazz. Raze has been a polarizing character in Valorant. We've seen feedback ranging from Raze is fine to please delete now. Basically Shroud vs Summit. This has also raised a question about lethal damage from abilities in Valorant. Of course, lots of people moving on that. And when, if at all, does it make sense? The value of lethal abilities is to create temporary areas of denial that require opponents to quickly reposition from that space. This can be used to reliably clear corners or push opponents off to angles where they have an advantage, forcing them to move from their position of power. Basically, HE grenades in Counter-Strike. Sometimes you can outright kill an opponent if they don't respect the ability in that moment or fail to respond. Or if you coordinate abilities with your team, like stacking a cluster grenade with a slow field, yeah, you're going to do a lot of damage there. This is interesting though. We don't expect the common case of lethal abilities to outright kill the opponents, especially at higher levels of play. I want to come back to that. As awareness and quick responses to lethal abilities increases, the value should shift from outright killing someone to the other areas of value that this ability type provides. This is key. So for example, I've been casting a lot of European Valorant tournaments, some pretty big stuff in there with like Team Liquid and stuff, just patting myself a bit on the back there. But the reason why I wanted to mention that is that in tournaments, Raze has been played quite a bit, but the Showstopper ultimate hasn't been getting as many or half as many kills as we've certainly seen in my own personal games in matchmaking. So it's fair to say in higher levels of play, where there's a bit more coordination and a bit more deliberate play, and smarter play overall, the Showstopper's effective use drops. However, the grenade, the paint shell, still got a lot of kills, and in a lot of pretty BS situations if I have to be honest. So not only was this ability good in matchmaking, because Raze is an absolute pub stomper, it was also really good in high-end tournaments, and not in a high-skill kind of way. Of course, it's still going to get picks in the future, but this just means that Raze players can still play Raze without necessarily, just relying on her abilities too much, bringing her down a peg. But they also do highlight it is on them to sort out the audio problems and sound cues, which, yeah, is kind of hard to deal with Raze when that kind of thing happens. But they do say when Raze equips a rocket or fires it from a distance, you should be able to hear and identify the oncoming threat, hopefully from that direction too. It makes sense why when you hear an enemy Jet's voice line or a Phoenix's voice line when they use their ultimate, that you shouldn't be able to know where they're coming from, because they are just realistically going to rush at you. So you don't want, oh, I can hear that they're coming from this direction, I'm going to run away in the other one because Phoenix ultimate only lasts 10 seconds or whatever it is. So having a general idea of where they could be, but also being caught out if you're in a bad position, I still think it's important to have that as opposed to, oh, Raze is using her rocket from over on the B site, I'm on A, I'm just going to run away from that general direction. That takes it from a very good ultimate to not a good one at all. That's everything that I wanted to talk about today. Didn't want to ramble on for too long. Let me know what you think of the changes in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you're new to the channel for more Valorant content. We will get back to Overwatch when some, meaningful stuff, I suppose, comes up. But until then, take care. We'll see you then.